Welcome everyone to Seminar Sunday, District 21's weekly webinar series. It's great to have you on the line this evening as we cover off the exciting topic of Free Toast Host, the free website that any Toastmasters club or district can have. It's great to have you with us this evening or this morning, whatever time it happens to be, wherever you join us from in the world. I hope that you find this hour together valuable and encourage you to ask questions in the chat or at the top of your menu. If you're joining us on the computer, you'll also have an option to submit a question. You will get the full interactive experience by joining us on the computer. If you're able to get to a computer and have dialed in by phone, please do sign in on the computer as well, if at all possible, just because we're going to go through a lot of interactive things, and we'll also have time, plenty of time, going to make sure that we have for question and answer, because of course, anytime there's technology, there can be some really interesting questions that come up as a result. This webinar is part of the series of weekly webinars that District 21 offers. We've got a lot of exciting topics that we will continue to cover in the coming weeks, including coaching, how to effectively lead and chair a meeting will be in 2 weeks. And then we'll start to get into thinking about next program year. Do you want to step up to be a leader? And we'll continue a weekly series until the last 2 weeks of December. We'll take a break, and then we'll resume in January for the coming 6 months and foreseeable future. If there's any topics that you think are really important that we cover, don't hesitate to let me know after the session. I'd love to integrate that in as well. So the majority of this session, as I mentioned, is going to be question and answers, as well as I'll do some live demonstration of the sites that I quite enjoy and hope that you enjoy as well. And we'll go through some of the basic and advanced functionality that comes as part of Free Toast Host. So I've mentioned it. What is it though? Well, Free Toast Host is it's a site, it's a website that your club or district can have. And it's a really cool tool. So let's first of all talk about the things we're going to cover. We're going to learn a little bit more about how this site can support your club. We're going to log in as a user and some of the key features of the site. Be a relatively high level overview. Hopefully all of you have had a chance to see the site before, but if not, please make sure to browse to the site either as we go through it or perhaps after the session. Tools and tricks for administering your websites, and what I'm most excited about is just exploring some of the best sites that are out there. There's some really cool things. We're going to highlight a few things that some clubs around the world are doing that are particularly of interest, and perhaps some of the things that they're not doing that well as well that you may be able to avoid doing to your club's website if you've got a Free Toast Host site. You'll notice this acronym as well, and this is it stands for Free Toast Host, the FTH. That is relatively common. So depending on your club and your circle that you may be in with Toastmasters, people may just use the FTH. They may say Free Toast Host. They may use the web address, which is toastmastersclubs.org. They're all the same thing that they're referring to, just different ways of saying it. So Free Toast Host is it's completely free. That's as the name alludes to. It's great because as a nonprofit organization, and we have very limited funding, particularly in our clubs. I mean, we want to keep those dues as low as possible in order to support our members. It would be very unfortunate if people want to be part of a Toastmasters group and it becomes unaffordable for them. So the website is just one piece of a cost that a club could have. And some sites can end up running a relatively high cost if you've got some fancy website happening. I know there's one club that had a WordPress site that they put up. I mean, it looked really attractive, of course, and there was all kinds of functionality they built into it, lots of great information, but there was costs like the address, the hosting, also known as like the place you would actually put the website online, and then they also were paying somebody every time an update needed to be made because none of their members knew how to do the updates. So there was a cost associated with that, and it became, hundreds of dollars in a year to maintain this site, whereas FreeToast Host is something that is relatively straightforward to use, as you'll see in just a moment, and it doesn't come at any cost whatsoever. I believe they take donations, but they don't charge a monthly or annual fee or anything along those lines. So your club does not need to contribute anything if you don't have any spare funds in your bank account. And who doesn't like that? Here's some of the abilities. I'm not going to go through them all, but I do want to highlight a few that are of particular interest. I think first and foremost, the FreeToast Host it's a website that is comfortable to navigate to for guests and potential members. That is probably the number one tool that if you're not going to use anything else at all, at least use it as a public relations landing page, because it's user-friendly, it's built and set up, designed just for Toastmasters, and I believe almost anybody can learn how to use the functionality built into it. So it's a good landing page. You set the Toastmasters.com website address to your FreeToast Host site, and that way when people find you under the Find a Club feature on Toastmasters.org, they see your club come up and can learn more about it. But beyond that, there's tons of other things that you can do. So it can be used to store things, to schedule things, you can create different pages for members only. You can use it to have contacts, all those things. There's tons that we won't even cover in this session that you can do with the site. So I'm a huge fan of it. There's lots of great tools out there, and FreeToast Host absolutely is one of the best. So does anybody have any questions just to get started here? Now that we're almost heading into the demo here, and I want to make sure everybody feel comfortable using the chat as much or as little as you want. We'll pause every time something interesting comes up and we can reflect on it. Karen, you've got a great question. How many people on the call are already using FreeToast Host for their club operations? I was actually going to do a poll of that right at the start of the session, and I completely forgot. So thank you for reminding me of that, Karen. Is your club using FreeToast Host? Let's get that question up. Just a second here. There we go. There should be a poll on the screen. This will be very interesting. 65% of you on this particular webinar are using FreeToast Host already, and 35% are not. So hopefully the 35% will drop significantly after this, or at least you feel enlightened that this is a great tool that can be used. And it doesn't work in all circumstances for sure. I mean, a great example I can think of is the majority of corporate clubs probably don't use FreeToast Host, and that's just because a lot of them have their own internal website that they can use, or they just don't find the value because of the fact they're not looking for external publications. They're looking for internal promotions. But for the rest, and even in corporate clubs, there is some value to using aspects of the site. You may not use it to recruit from the outside world, but you may use some of the other tools. For example, the meeting scheduling tool it's a great tool. It can be compared with other things like TurboBase and EasySpeak for scheduling your meetings. So thank you everyone for sharing. That was interesting. And thank you, Karen, for reminding me, because yes, I had that in my mind when I was having dinner earlier. I thought, oh yes, I've got to ask everyone right at the start. That was going to be the first thing I did. Completely lost it. Now we know what we're dealing with, and I have been educated. I just did a speaker to trainer session in Kamloops yesterday, and I was preaching that, about getting to know the audience's level at the start of a training session. And that way you know where you need to go. So thank you for that. So let's do a demo then. Let's move right into the good stuff, the actual website. I'm just going to switch to sharing my screen here. That shouldn't take too long. I am going to end up doing both, Karen. I'm going to log in as a member and as an administrator, and we'll kind of navigate it and see what we can do as we go through the process. So I have it up on, hopefully if you are joining us by computer, you're able to see it now on the screen. This is just the basic website where you go to actually request a free Toast host site. So the URL you'll see at the top there is toastmastersclubs.org. From there, first of all, it's nice because you can actually share with your club officers or your club members. There's sample club website, and that's just a very basic version. For your information, this is the third revision of Free Toast Host. So it has some different look, feel, and abilities than it did, for example, a year ago when it was still the second version. Which will be nice for those of you that haven't recently visited it to see perhaps how the overall feel of the website is. It's not a perfect site, but it is pretty darn good, I would suggest. So on the bottom here of this screen, this is where you're going to go in and you're going to ask for the site. You simply fill in your club number, your details, submit it, and they're pretty quick. I think they're usually 1 to 2 days or so, and they'll get you a site. And from there, you can just kind of get in and play around and use the different tools to build up your club's website. So that's the first thing that you're going to do when you want to get a site. I do want to highlight as well, this is something that I'm going to point out a few things during the whole webinar here this evening. Make sure you also go to the Toastmasters International website and go in and read the brand manual to make sure that your website, as you build it out, is within compliance with the brand that's using the correct images and the logo and all the other aspects of Toastmasters International. Really important that you're representing Toastmasters International well, and there's so many little things that are easy to make mistakes on. Nobody's a master of it, but if you read the manual, then certainly that will help in making a really good quality website that will represent Toastmasters International as an organization well, and also shows that you're caring about making a professional site with an image that reflects what your club is all about. So I'm going to go to my website here, my club's website. I'm in Victoria Diversity, great club. If anybody is ever in the Victoria area and wants to come visit, it's a lot of fun. We are not the best website. I'm not going to lie there and, for example, the colors of the font here are not within brand compliance. But why I wanted to come here is because I can log into this website and we can kind of poke around anywhere that we want to, and kind of, if anybody has any questions about the user experience as just a club member or a club officer. We'll go through that first. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the sites that I really like from some clubs. And from there, we'll go to how to get in as an administrator and start to actually build out some of the things that are in the website. But like I said, because we have that limited time, I want to make sure, ask as many questions as you want. Don't feel like you have to wait. I'm going to skim in some areas just to make sure we have more time to find out things that you want to know about. But if there's not a lot of questions in the end, I will try to go a little bit deeper in certain areas as well. And you are right, Karen. There is some great elevator messages there. There's things that most people don't think about, unless that's unless you do marketing or public relations for a living. You wouldn't think much about, for example, the font. Toastmasters International, of course, has their font, but there's all different. There's like 10 different fonts depending on how you're using it. And there's a free version and paid version of font, all those types of things. Elevator messages, like you've said, lots of great things. Read it regardless whether or not you're creating a free Toast host site, but particularly when you're creating a site like this, important to properly represent the brand. So this is what it looks like when you've got your club website up. Just as an FYI, right here at the top, the club name, that's not taken from Toastmasters International. You can change it and add things to it. So for example, you could say Victoria Diversity for Communication Leadership Excellence, or something along those lines. That may be a little bit long for the top bar there. But what I'm trying to point out is you can actually add on a little something to it if you wish to. It's not restricted to just the club's name, and some examples of sites we'll look at today will show that. So here on the left-hand side is really where I want to focus as a signed-in member. This is just the menu that anybody sees that comes to your club's website. It can be a potential guest. It could be someone like myself, just curious. I'm reading up about what your club's all about. And it could be, of course, your members as well. So there is no, there's no, what's the word I'm looking here? There's no block. There's no restriction on anything you access here. So, for example, the Meet Our Members, you actually get to see pictures and little bios about the individual members of the club. So here's our club president, and because we're a diversity club, we've decided to do the bio in English and the mother language of the member, which has happened in some cases, not all. This is, each member can opt in or opt out of actually having their bio here. I encourage, if you do have a site, getting your members on board with this, because it really helps when a guest comes to your website to learn a little bit about what the members are all about. If this page had, for example, just one person's name there, there wasn't a bio, there wasn't a picture, then the guests are getting zero value out of this page. And it can be turned off or on. So if, for example, nobody's willing to share their bio, I believe you can shut this page down. Most pages you can, and I'm pretty sure this one you can as well. But if you encourage your membership to go on here, then there's a lot more value. As you can see, we've got a number of people here who have entered bios, and it helps just to make us a little bit more human. Humanize the club a little bit. You've got things like meeting information and how to get to the meeting. That's really important. We have our fees there as well, just as an FYI to guests, so they know when they come in that you're not getting this for free. It's not a free program. There is a cost to it, but it's very low. what else do we have? There's all kinds of other things. You can have downloadable files here as well if you choose to. Member side of it is, once again, it depends on the club. Our club has moved away from doing the agendas on Free Toast Host. We were using Free Toast Host for our agendas up until a couple of months ago, probably, when we started using the Easy Speak system instead. I have things I love about Free Toast Host agenda and things that I wish they would change. But I would recommend, if you're looking for a tool to schedule your meetings, you can have that. So you have to sign in to get all of these things. So I've signed in already. I didn't cover that off. There's just a box here. It says log out right now, but it will say log in when you first go to the site. You type your name and it will find you, unless the administrator hasn't added you in. So when I type MI, for example, it shows my name. I click on it. I enter my password. If I haven't got a password yet, I leave the password blank, hit sign in, and it sends me an email with a password. So it's quite high tech. So I'll click on this actually. I'll click on the agendas. And what you can actually do is, let's go back here to when, let's see how this, I'm not sure if we were still using it at that time. This is kind of what it looks like, though, is it has the different roles. When you're a member, you can see the roles. Over here, because this is in the past, over here, before the meeting, there was an option to click on it and sign up for whatever role it happened to be, or you'd see the name of the person who had already signed up for that role. You've got your timings, the roles, you can add them in, you can remove, etc. And when you go into print, it actually offers you options about what information you want to see on your printed agenda. So for example, the members who are attending or not attending, you can get all of those things. It's really handy, speaker introductions, etc. You hit OK, and it's going to come up with the agenda, just like that. Ready to print, and away you go. So I really find that very attractive because, yes, you could use the Toastmasters International template to put an agenda together, but that makes it a bit challenging because you've got to do that manually, where this is doing the heavy lifting for you. So that's really nice. That's a nice feature about it. The Toastmaster VP Education and any other once it depends on the settings, how you've set up the site, have access to edit all of the agendas. So you could go in and actually start putting in, as you can see here, there is different actions you can do. And this is even if you're Toastmaster, you don't have to be an administrator. You can actually set up the agendas, the description. So we put our theme here. So XYZ, for example, you can put it in as your theme, save it, and that ends up being the top part of your agenda. And then the items that will be on your agenda, and of course, finally, the attendance, but the attendance is, people can either confirm that they're coming or not, or you can also confirm on their behalf if you know for sure. So I'm not going to go into that screen just because, I mean, that's more or less just checking people on or off, whether they're coming or not. And as you can see, it's relatively self-explanatory. The pencil, of course, is to edit something, trash can to remove something, and then the up and down arrows, of course, to move things around within your agenda. So you can move things lower in the meeting or higher up in the meeting, depending on what order you want things to happen. As Toastmaster VP Education, you can actually drop down the list and pick a member who's going to take on whatever the role happens to be. And you can set templates for your agenda. As you can see there, save as new agenda. So if you went and moved things around, you'd be able to save it as a template. I believe that's restricted to an officer. I am set up here as an officer. I believe I'm in here as VP Education. So you may not see that necessarily unless you're VP Education. But that's just another thing that you may want to know, is if you've got a different officer role, you're going to have different access levels to get into various things. So just something to keep in mind. The experience may not be exactly the same, whatever you're getting versus what I'm getting in some areas, but that's just because of the officer access. And you'll find yourself that you may even have more access in some areas than I have. But the overall look and feel is going to be similar. I think that's all in agendas. I mean, once again, you can get in here and play around prior to actually using it. If you're just building this up, for example, you can create some sample agendas, play around with them, edit it, find what works for your club or what matches what your club is currently doing. It does allow also you send out that email. That's the only other thing that I did forget to mention there. So you can actually email the agenda out. Hey, this is what our meeting's looking like. Please go in and sign up for any missing roles, for example, if you had half an agenda filled only. Karen's mentioned here that very recently the ability to reconcile the agenda has been added. This means going in after the meeting and updating who was actually there and adding meeting notes. Very nice feature. It is, and that's something that EasySpeak just started, that they've done for a while. So these folks now are kind of keeping up in some aspects with EasySpeak or some of the other tools. And that's something I always appreciate, because it's easy to put together a tool like this, like Free Toast Host. But to actually have the features and tools that people need added in shows that they're looking to continuously improve. And the fact that if you sign up for a Free Toast Host site, you know that they're continuing to improve and build on it. You don't have to worry that tomorrow the lights are getting turned off and that's it for this site. They're continuously finding new ways to innovate and help you and your club be more successful. And I did notice there was a question slightly above that here. Sorry, I missed it. Virginia, Free Toast Host, do they provide the Toastmasters fonts? I don't believe they do. That is a really good question. I think they offer, there's different font choices, of course. They have Arial for sure, which is one of the fonts. Myriad Pro, though, I don't think they have. We can maybe explore that when we get into the administration section. All right, there's also club email addresses, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. This is actually where you can send out an email to the members, all members. This is restricted to current members. So, for example, if one of you went and tried to send an email to members-507-6070 @toastmastersclubs.org, the email would not be successful. So that is one of the other cool things about this site, is it actually, the way the email system works restricts it to the appropriate groups. You'll see also, though, it does create even individual email addresses for the president or any of the other officer roles. So if you wanted to send an officer an email, you can use that email address, and then you're not using their own personal email address, which is kind of nice as well. It protects the privacy of those officers. And as you can see, they're publicly accessible. So anybody that has a Free Toast Host site, just as an FYI, you could go in, for example, and do president dash the club number at toastmastersclubs.org, and they would get the email. I believe there's a way to also create a custom email. But even here, as you can see, there's guests and those types of things. So if you list people as guests on the site, then you can actually send out email notifications to them. Oh, hey, this is how our last meeting went. We missed you, whatever happened to be. Member downloads. So this is what I was talking about at the start as well. The fact that you can have almost a warehouse of information for guests or members available. So, for example, these documents here, well, about Toastmasters, that's more of a guest focused, but perhaps the pathways information, that may be more restricted to members to not overwhelm the guests. Roles, so all the different information about roles within the meeting, that's definitely more for members. And there's an option when you're an administrator to actually have it locked down to members only or open to guests. So that's a nice feature that the guests won't see the things that aren't relevant to them. The members will be able to see everything that is on the site. And I believe the storage amount is relatively flexible. There's, as you can see, there's a fair amount of documents here, so it's not like you can only get a couple in. You can get quite a few documents loaded in if you want to, and use that kind of as a database for your club's records, whatever you wish to share with the membership. Does anybody have any questions about the user abilities within FreeToast Host? I'm glad to hear Karen's already picked up something. We're only halfway through this webinar and she's picked up something. How many administrators can you have? Thanks for that question, Virginia. You can only, this is actually how the site works. It is a bit different than what you would know conventionally as administrators. So each member can log in to the site as long as they've been set up, of course. The officers have certain accesses, but there is only one true administrator, and the true administrator is actually they log in with the club number as the administrator. So that password and username is not linked to a particular member, it's linked to the club, which means that potentially you could have the club president, VP Public Relations, and secretary, as an example, with the login credentials to administer the site. Of course, you don't have to. You can have it as locked down or as free open as you really wish. I wouldn't recommend you have it publicly available, the username and password to get in as an administrator, of course. But there is no, for example, saying, all right, Virginia, you're going to be the administrator, check. Michael, you're going to be the administrator, check. It is, here's the username and password for the club, and then you have all access as an administrator. FreeToast Host has now set up a way to put the Pathways Basecamp managers in a contact list. This contact list is then used to send verifications notices to the 3 Basecamp managers when a verification has been requested. We have found it very useful. Thanks for that, Maureen. Yes, the Basecamp manager it's been a bit of a challenge for, I think, a large number of clubs, because what happens now is your club's email address listed on the Toastmasters.org website is where notifications of level completions, for example, is sent from Basecamp. So the president, VP Education, and secretary can go into Basecamp Manager, confirm that somebody has completed level 1, for example, but they need to be notified. Now, of course, they could have the member at the club saying, hey, I've submitted my request to have my level completed. Can you approve it? But there's also that automatic email that can go out, and because it's going to pick the club's website, it's got to be treated a bit carefully because it's only one email address it goes to. And the way to foolproof that is what Maureen is saying, is you can use the free Toast host Pathways Basecamp Manager contact list with that email feature. And that way, whoever needs to get the email will get it. And if you keep your officers up to date on free Toast host, which is easy to do, then that means, of course, everyone is getting the notification, even as officers change, because that's the biggest challenge too, of course, is remembering to go in and change your email address because, you know, Jenny's no longer VP Education, it's now Jim, right? Now it's just switch it on free Toast host and you don't need to worry about other locations other than reporting it to Toastmasters International in Club Central, of course. All right, if there's no other questions on this aspect, like I said, there's time for questions in between things. I just want to make sure we get through some of the other things here as well. We're mixing and kind of mashing between questions and some of the content of what you can and cannot do in free Toast host. But I want to bring up a couple of sites and just share them with you. I've loaded up quite a few here. I'm not going to go through them all, but it is important to just see what some clubs are doing out there, because that's the other barrier that we've put on ourselves, of course, is if we don't check out other clubs, we have no idea what we can really do with our site. So this is something I don't see often, is you can actually change the background on things like the menus and the main page. That may or may not be for your club, but it is an ability that you have as an administrator. You can go in and actually change the background, make it a little bit more dynamic. This club has quite a lot of information. And the other thing you'll notice is they're keeping their site current. And that is a really good thing to see, because then you know that the club is alive. There's things happening. If you go to a site like my club's website, for example, you see a picture in front of a Christmas tree, you wonder, boy, do they use their website? This leaves no question whatsoever. November 1st is the most recent update that's within the week. And it's a nice summary of here's what you missed at a meeting. As you can see, it says, you know, if you miss a meeting, right? So you can actually go through, sorry, I scrolled there a little fast. They had division contests recently in this particular district. Pictures, anything like that. It really helps attract people because they see, oh, well, there's the group of people. They look like a pretty friendly bunch. And there's details of all of their meetings. So just something I wanted to highlight with their site. The other site I was going to pull up here, really a lot of these I'd like to show off, but just because of time, we're not going to be able to go through every single one. This particular site has the evaluation forms for the projects in Pathways. So if you're an evaluator, you of course can go into the Pathways Basecamp and get the evaluation form, but it's also available here to download. Here's an example of probably a couple of branding challenges, that's for sure. Time, putting Toastmasters International on that, probably not something you should do. But they do have the core values, the mission statements, another branding thing that shouldn't be done, the home of Simi Valley Toastmasters. The name Toastmasters that's the name brand, so that has to of course be used appropriately with Toastmasters colors, etc. And this is another thing that I really like about their site, though, is they've got the tabs here, so you can see things about their meeting themes. But you can also tab over and say, oh, okay, well, there's some details about this club's meeting location. At the bottom, it's reaffirming there's no membership restriction whatsoever with our club. You can come and check out our club anytime. So I like that because personally anyways, I know when you're on a mobile phone, what's more popular, of course, is scrolling, continuously scrolling. So you'd rather something longer usually than multiple clicks. But I still kind of like the, click between tabs to get information. So it's something to consider carefully, of course, depending on what your audience is. Next meeting at the top as well, that's very handy. So then okay, they're keeping their site up to date as well. They've already got their next meeting date up there. I don't have any questions about whether or not they're meeting next Thursday the 8th. It's clear to me. There's some more things happening in the chat here, so I'll just turn attention to that for just a moment. And Maureen has cautioned as well about admin access. Absolutely. It's nice to be able to give the right people the access because, I mean, once you get in there, you can do anything. But once again, you don't want that public or even close to public because the site could end up getting messed up too, and then you'd really have to rebuild it almost from scratch if something was really broken. Just make sure, whoever gets it has full trust. That's the main thing. So there's lots of other good information and tidbits through the chat there. Thank you for continuing to share your knowledge and questions through the chat. You'll also notice that this club has quite an extensive menu. So there's the Meet Our Members, which is a default, but there's also things that you can add in. So for example, November 19th, 2015 meeting is here. They've added that in. They haven't removed it for whatever reason. They've left it in there, but they've went in and added these pages. You can add and remove as you please. And this has become quite extensive, perhaps a little bit overwhelming. Remember that you have those tabs at the top too. You've got the members only. So some of these pages could be made members only, which would make it a bit easier for the guest to navigate. Because, as much as I like these sites, which is why I'm showing them to you, a site like this can also be a little bit overwhelming for a guest for sure. Seeing that many options on the left-hand side. They just want to come to the meeting, not necessarily read 1,000 pages of content first. Here's an advanced club. They've went and they've actually changed their background to match the name of the club, which I thought was interesting. You'll notice that on the side. Once again, using the name brand inappropriately, but I'm just trying to point this out, not because I think the site is bad or the club is bad, just things that we don't necessarily think of. And I'm just as guilty as the next person in some cases, like, oh yeah, I shouldn't have done that with the name or whatever happens to be. So just pointing that out to highlight those. So you think about that a little bit more consciously as well when you build out your website. So these folks have also went with the tabs, but another thing they're doing, because they're an advanced club and they have keynotes, they've actually uploaded some of their keynotes to their website. And that way you can actually just click play. It's actually, I'm using actually a lot, sorry about that. It's on YouTube. So they're not actually putting it on the website. They're just linking to it from the website, but you can watch it there, which is extremely convenient. Lots of great information on this site. I really like it. So I encourage you to check out these sites as well after the call anytime, especially as you're building out your website. It's nice to go in and just see what other clubs are doing, compare. Blue Heron, which is a club in District 96 next to District 21, is the Club of Champions. And I like that. And they've even got this, but you don't need to be champion to join, kind of made it a little bit funny. And then they back it up though. They've got photos of their members with various certificates and trophies and all these different things to really show that, hey, we're not kidding. Our club is full of champions. So if you're looking to be a really good public speaker, for example, you're going to go to a club like this because you see, wow, these guys really are winning awards left, right, and center. So something that you could do if that's your club, you're trying, whatever your club is catering to, if you're trying to demonstrate that, yeah, we're competitive in our speech contest, for example, well, why not, really emphasize that throughout your website and give people the feeling that you guys are competing in public speaking. So that's all I'll show for sites right now. I do want to make sure we have a couple of minutes to go in as administrators. If I can switch over here just a moment. There we go. So I'm going to log in as the site administrator. This is what I mentioned before. You only have the two boxes to log in, either as a member or as an administrator. And when you go in as an administrator, I've got my login credentials there saved. I'm going to log in now. You'll notice on the main page, you've got this edit option. So if I click on that, all of a sudden, I can start editing things. So you'll notice, for example, here, improve your communication and leadership skills, meet new friends. We could put anything else there we want to, start typing in the box, hit save, and away we go. We can change the text on the page below, update information as required. We could change the color here, 772-432, for example, and away we go. I'm not going to do that though because I'm not the club's VP Public Relations. Update the picture. Anything can be done here in terms of the look of this page. On the left-hand side, you'll also notice Launch Administration Console, which is the same console really that we just had up, but I wanted to show that there's a different way to get in. Karen has an excellent question. How do you find all the different random club sites to browse through them and troll for website ideas? Google. I just Google the, I think, best free toast host sites, and there's a forum that comes up. It's got a list of really good club websites. I believe some of them may be slightly outdated now, but it's in relative good condition. Most of the sites are pretty good. I did browse through, probably felt like 100 before doing this webinar. So there's quite a few choices out there online that you can play around with and get a feel for and see what works for your club. And then it's almost trial and error going in here too. And all right, let's try this because sometimes it's not clear how to change those settings. From the administration console here, there's two different things. There's the module. So right now we're in the website settings, but if we wanted, we could go into membership management and add and remove club members. Important to do if you're using it for people logging in and actually doing things. The file manager that I referenced, so that's where you can actually drop in files that you wish to make available to members or guests. Custom web pages, once again, we referenced that just a few moments ago, so that's where you'd go in and you could make as many web pages for your site as you wish, etc. So those are kind of the general modules, and within them, we've got these tabs. The appearance is here, so you can actually start changing the colors of different things. And that's where I talked about, there's the website background. you can go ahead and you change that. Lots of different things. I'm not going to go through them all, of course. You can hide things. So that's extremely handy if you, for example, we decide not to have a club calendar up on the website. That's a feature you can have. Simply uncheck the box, save it, and it appears on the website again for guests and members to view. And that's where you'd shut down the Meet Our Members page if you didn't want it displaying because people weren't using it and it was possibly not benefiting your club. As easy as checking it, saving it, and it's hidden. Let's see here. Meeting info, this is where you can go in and actually just put any information that needs to go on that website. Once you put in your address for where you're meeting, you can actually hit see the map. It uses Google Maps and it shows you exactly where it's finding based on the search that you did. Social media links. So here on the left-hand side of the page, you'll notice that there's just a Facebook link. But if we added addresses for other sites, those would all display here. The floater message that can be at the top. And here's the access. So remember how I said, depending on how your club is set up, different people are going to have access to different things. Membership management, for example, the president, vice president membership, and treasurer have access to. So if I log in as a member, as VP Education, I won't be able to manage the membership because that's not within my portfolio, but I'll be able to access custom web pages, for example, or file manager. So just different settings, and you can set up to 3 different officers for each of these. So as you can see, you can X out and only the administrator can get it, but you can also choose up to 3, which our club has taken advantage of consistently here, as you'll notice. There'll be lots of different things, website settings. So we could say, all right, the president can do that, etc. Again, I'm not going to change anything on here just because it's as far as who really is responsible for it, it comes down to the VP of Public Relations. So it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for me just to go in and start mucking around with things, but at least we know where it is. And if you're not the VP Public Relations, I would encourage you to work with the VP Public Relations, help them through this website because it's got so much rich content. I mean, as you can see, there's little things here and there that you can just adjust, and it really brings a new life almost to the site. From the example websites, you can see every site is quite different. I mean, the shell itself is the same. That's what comes baked in no matter what you pick. But how you make it look and how updated it is and the feel you can play around with to match your club's culture and really show that you're a lively, dynamic group. The only thing that I really urge you to be careful of, though, is if you do start updating your website and putting dates on there, make sure it's kept current, because the worst thing you can do, like this site, as much as I was kind of joking around about it earlier that, hey, we got a picture of a Christmas tree here, there's no dates on it. Having no dates is better than having old dates. Having current dates, of course, is best, because I see this as a guest. Okay, you meet every Monday from this time to this time, but does that include this Monday? I don't know, right? Whereas if it said next meeting, November 5th, 6:15 p.m., be there, be square, or whatever it says, that's a much more convincing argument for a guest. Okay, they are meeting tomorrow. I know that definitively now. So cautionary note, if you're going to use dates, keep them current. It's better to have no date than old dates, because if we said our next meeting is September 3rd, that's not going to add a lot of value to a guest. They're going to think the club folded after September 3rd. We have just 3 minutes left, but I want to see if there's any questions. I'll be available afterwards anytime if anybody wants to reach out. An hour is extremely challenging to cover off all of the tools that Free Toast Host offers, but I hope that you've taken away a minimum of one nugget, if not 10 nuggets or more. And I encourage you, if you don't have that site up for your club now, get it up as soon as possible, play around with it, find those other really strong websites out there, and try to mimic some of it. Take some ideas and make them yours. You don't have to copy the absolute, verbatim from those sites, but you could certainly take the idea, translate it to how it works for your club. Karen's asked, why did you choose to add EasySpeak for agenda management? Do your club members have to go to Free Toast Host for any reasons, or do they need to go only to EasySpeak? Our club members wouldn't be too thrilled to have to be familiar with two websites. No, so we are using just EasySpeak right now. The decision was made because it does things like, for example, the auto generate of an agenda. There's various pros and cons to both. There's things that I like more in both, but we just found that Free Toast Host wasn't giving us quite what we wanted at the time, and made the decision to go to EasySpeak. But the members don't need to go into Free Toast Host. The only exception is we've put those role. It's kind of almost a script for each role for our new members in there. So we provide that to the members. I actually can't remember if we made it public or not, though. Let's see. Oh, yes, so it's public here. So they don't even need to log into it. We just haven't shut down a lot of the member-only areas. I'm glad you found it helpful, Leslie. I've really enjoyed this session. I always enjoy the sessions. I always wish we had more time. But, an hour is plenty for everyone, I think, on a Sunday evening to reflect on whatever the topic happens to be. And I hope that everybody can join us again in the coming weeks. Next week, we're going to have a great session on coaching, I believe, because Leslie is going to be working with us on that one. And just in closing, I'm going to put my contact details up here. If you want to send me an email, send me an email. I'm happy to help out any way I can with your Free Toast Host adventures. I really encourage you to try it out and make it work for your club. I hope everyone has a great week ahead, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks for joining us.